right. So, hey everyone, happy Friday. This is it's gonna be quite the quite the good podcast. It's gonna be quite the interesting week. How's it going, boys? You having a good time?
Absolutely. I've been recently telling people that people say, "How are you doing?" I say, "Great," and they say, "That's good." And then I say to them, "Look, every day I try and have a better day than yesterday, so I'm on an exponential uptrend in terms of how good my life is." And then they're always like, "Oh, that's pretty optimistic." And then I say, "Yeah, well, it's more of an aspiration rather than a realistic goal, but it's been going
Yeah,
great." So I had a freaking amazing day today. Definitely better than yesterday.
yeah. I
Having
mean,
still going.
that sounds like I've heard a lot of different people say, like successful people say similar things. Like content creators, like Mr. Beast, say, "I just try to make my video a little bit better. Next time, just fix something a little bit better." And everyone's just like, "Just do one more rep every day, when you're pushing up or whatever." And I found that you can't really control if your day is better from day to day, but you can control the elements that go into it. And I've noticed that when I have bad days, because I still do have bad days once in a while, they're just nowhere near as bad these days because I'm just like, okay, well, I'm doing what I love. I'm better at it than I was like a year ago. I'm living in a better spot. My house looks better because I've been working on it. I'm like all the stuff that like brings me back to why I should not be miserable in this moment, even though I feel like it sometimes. Is just like, okay, well that's better, and then it's just a lot easier to Before I was just miserable all the time. There's
Gratitude,
no way
man.
to. Yeah,
Gratitude correlates heavily with happiness, so be grateful for more stuff, you'll be happier.
yeah, and not just gratitude specifically, but like I noticed, people need confidence, and a lot of people are just talking about mindset for confidence, but the biggest confidence builder is knowledge that you got this. And knowledge comes from like facts and experience. It's like, oh, I can't, like, I don't know, am I good enough? Well, then do it a million times till you're like, yeah, just another day in the office, of course. So yeah, that's kind of the funny thing. When I started talking about living on crypto and stuff, there were some times when I'm just like, what if someone like exposes me? Like, what if someone asks me a curveball question? I'm just like, I don't know. And then they're going to be like, he doesn't actually know. And then I don't really care anymore because now people ask me like, well, what X, Y, Z? I've done it enough that I have like, I have lots of real answers from real life to give. So yeah, that's fun. But yeah, for everyone tuning in, and being like, why the hell is this guy late again? Sorry, it's my last little vestiges of my Mexican heritage that I got to keep with the timeliness. But also, I was more than ready to start the show on time, but then I was like, well, I'll make my coffee in like 10 minutes, and then I'll have a whole like 45 minutes before the show, and then I got on this like rabbit hole, and I've been trying to find a way to it's relatively easy depending on where you are to get prepaid no KYC crypto cards that are like virtual cards, and you can get them like right away with crypto. And the problem is, in person, you need an NFC payment wallet like a Google Pay or Apple Pay or something to spend it, which I've been using. But now I'm trying to do this whole Graphene OS de-Googled because Naomi Brockwell told me my phone is spying on me. I didn't know that before, and now I do. So I'm trying to do that. And that's a huge roadblock because Google, like NFC payment apps, do not like de-Google devices. And I'm like, I'm getting like really close to a breakthrough though. And I'm just like, oh no. I'm like, oh shit, 5 minutes podcast. Oh no. And that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, so let me see. Ooh. Tivero Space says hello. He's a Decred fellow who's been following my stuff, and he's a good dude. All right, so I think we have enough people watching for now. Let's roll the intro and officially get going on this train wreck. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, officially happy Friday. Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown number 117, which means I've done this roughly 117 weeks in a row. I skipped a couple of times when I had an outage or when I was traveling. But, I mean, that's like it's 2.5 years or something now. It's pretty good. I'm joined by the wonderful gentlemen, Kallisti and Jeremy, both of whom have been on before. How's it going, guys?
Okay.
What's up? It's doing great.
Life's pretty
Yeah.
good, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to see both of you have sunlight outside. So it's like it's daylight for all of us. So that's good. Sometimes I remember episode like 2 of this show, I had Josiah from the Digibyte community on, and he's a poor guy's out there in Kiwistan. And so in New Zealand, it was like 4 in the morning. He just got up, and you could see it in his eyes. And I'm not doing that to someone ever again. not
You
unless
got to
they
make
pay
it
me to.
happen. That's it,
Yeah.
though, man. Sometimes just, when duty calls, you just got to get the job done. You got to get up early. Damn, that's what you got to do, right? So,
One
respect.
time, I do remember some group of school children in India wanted a presentation on crypto, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning my time. And so I was just there, and I had to put on a button shirt to look respectable and talk to all these kids. And then they had like a Q&A, which I didn't expect. And the thick accented Q&A at 3 in the morning. It was a little rough, but like no regrets. Just remind you guys, if you're in my Discord, you can go to the Digital Cash Rundown channel and leave super chats, and I will answer those. Ones, if you leave them in the YouTube or Odyssey comments, see how I'm feeling, right? But so the news for today, right? The big news thing everyone's been talking about is, of course, the SEC thing. And here I brought up this article thing because Coinbase and Binance both got sued by the SEC over selling illegal securities or whatever. And anyway, this article, Coinbase reminds world it tried to embrace regulation as SEC sues for violation. Coinbase met with the SEC 30 times in 2022 seeking regulatory guidance, and now it will vigorously defend itself, it says. So one thing that's been kind of interesting with this whole thing has been it's been like it seems like a very cut and dry U.S. regulators going after crypto, period. And it seems like no one's trying to say, well, but play nice to us. All the big players are fighting back. They're not like, oh, well, let's strike a deal. Like, I think they're past that. It's like war kind of thing. So what do you guys' hot takes on the whole situation?
Love it. Love to see it. I mean, obviously, you don't love the SEC getting involved in crypto, but that was always going to be inevitable. They're always going to meddle around. And the fact that it's all just such a sham fraud is just so clear to anybody who's paying attention. Gary Gensler put out his tweet saying, blah, 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 Coinbase are trying to like work around the rules or whatever. And then immediately got community noted on Twitter by somebody who, put in like, oh, well, actually Coinbase have tried to engage many times and have got no guidance on the exact crime, rules they're now being accused of violating by the regulators who chose not to give them those rules, like or something like that. So you love to see it. That's a sham. Everybody knows it, and obviously crypto is winning. It's what it all comes down to. The more regulatory FUD there is, every time I hear that, I think Streisand effect, and I think they can't stop us. It's that simple. Otherwise, this would be more of an issue, but it isn't. So I feel bad for Brian Armstrong and whoever has to deal with this stuff, at the coalface. But basically, that's like crypto's smokescreen shield, so everybody else can just crack on with it in the meantime, and it's just strength in numbers. So that's decentralization.
You mean you're not celebrating the regulation of possibly competitors?
No, of course not. I'm not like loving it that other coins are getting regulated and wrecked. I mean, it's all the same, really. It's just a whack-a-mole, right? I'm sure if they have a rough time of it, then BCH or other coins that I do sort of might be more involved in will come up on the agenda next. So anybody who thinks, it's not me this time, celebrate. Well, that's nonsense. Like, they're coming for everybody. We just have to win as crypto as an industry, and that's luckily where the big players like Binance and Coinbase, they're profiting off every single coin at once. So it's pretty perfect if they're the ones that have to defend it.
Do you guys think
absolutely.
there's kind of like pattern to the targets for the regulation? Like what do you think any kind of clarity might emerge on what is and what isn't a security in this space?
Well, I think yes, that will be an end result of all this. Not because that's what they're trying to do now, but because at some point, I don't think that there's going to be. I don't think that the SEC is going to just drive all crypto out of the U.S. I don't think it's going to happen. There's too many people with too much money to throw at political opponents of the administration that's doing that. Like, there's too much of a game going on there. However, I also don't think that they're going to just never mind, everything's fine. I think they'll have to come up with some kind of a criteria, which is honestly good news for both crypto and for the government. I hate to say, which I don't like good news for the government anyway. Anyway, it comes, but that is kind of what it is. It's kind of interesting. So I'm going to on the little screen. There's some tweet that was posted by a friend. Oops, wrong one. Anyway, that gives a Venn diagram of securities according to the SEC, and they don't match based on the lawsuits because they have a Bittrex lawsuit, a Binance lawsuit, and a Coinbase lawsuit. And so the only one that squares up with all of those ones is Algorand, that was mentioned in all of those. But then other ones they just kind of pick and choose. Like Cardano was and Solana were Binance and Coinbase, but the Bittrex case, no. The Bittrex case mentions, and the Coinbase case mentioned Dash, but Binance case does not mention Dash, even though Binance does list Dash. They're just all over the place. I think it was it Eric Voorhees might have pointed out that, on Monday they decide, on Tuesday they don't know what they decided on Monday. They're kind of going all over the place. But it's interesting. There's some nuance to this whole thing. Well, first of all, who gets targeted by these guys? I've noticed a pattern of groups that have chosen to engage with the SEC, and that's kind of weird. But so, for example, Library, which got sued directly, kind of the company behind the Library protocol, they did actively pursue a no action letter from the SEC and try to be as above board as possible. Got them on the radar. I know that one group involved with Dash years ago did also pursue a no action letter from the SEC, laying out a big case. The Crypto Ratings Council, which rated assets from least to most likely to be a security, put Dash at number one with Bitcoin and Litecoin, maybe like this least possible, all this kind of stuff. But then that gets you on the radar. I'm pretty sure Algorand also did that. At least Gensler has talked about Algorand famously in the past, and he seemed to be a big proponent, in fact. And now that's the one that's stuck in all the lawsuits you remembered in all of those. So that seems to be one thing that is pretty clear. The other thing, though, I found out is in none of these cases, even in the Library case, where they're actually suing the company behind the Library protocol, none of them are they alleging that any of these tokens are securities. They're just saying that they were sold as securities. In fact, I was there when the SEC lawyer was, when the Library case was, the judge was saying, "Are you asking us to rule that the Library token is LBC is a security?" He says, "No, we're not at this time." And they were almost begging the judge not to rule on if the token itself was a security. And the judge actually said, I want to rule on it because that adds a lot of clarity. And then, but he says, I can't, unless it's been brought before me, I can't rule on it. And so the SEC refused to bring it up. And that's the most clear case kind of thing. In these other cases, they're just saying these exchanges sold illegal securities without saying the tokens that they were accused of selling as illegal securities were actually securities, which is such weird, legalistic, line, walking the line. I think they're just saying you sold these things as investments, even if they are usually used as practical. It's the intent behind the sale, not behind the actual asset. And what they're going after are these exchanges. They're going after the exchanges because they want to drive them out of the country, probably, or maybe they want to just make them all register as securities exchanges. But they're using the assets as leverage. It's kind of using children as leverage in a divorce or something like that. They're using the assets as leverage, not actually targeting the assets, which is, it's a little dirty.
Well, it's not surprising, right? It's literally like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? If they don't have to pick a position, then they can just try and keep everyone in this limbo of like, I don't know. But the thing is, like, that's a losing strategy in the long run, because one, the public clues on that this is just complete bullshit. Two, it gives essentially just free time for just the gray mass to continue, under which crypto thrives because it's decentralized. And thirdly, eventually they have to come out with something, and just the longer they don't, the basically the better for crypto. So they're in between a rock and a hard place. If they make it clear, then we'll just be like, right, fine, we'll just do that, and then carry on. And if they don't, well, then we got to carry on anyway. So
yeah,
it's not like Gary Gensler doesn't know what he's doing either. I mean, I really think like he's very intentional about exactly what words he says and when he says them. And I think kind of the public doesn't really see it that way. It's like, oh, he's being so unclear, he's being so vague. It's intentional. I mean, one, that's how legalese is played. But then two, it's not like Gary Gensler doesn't know what crypto is either. I mean, I've seen his MIT classes. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So I think he has to be deliberate, kind of, maybe in a way, he knows what it's all about, and he's doing us a favor by stalling the government, not letting the government actually set this definition, especially the US government, because that sets precedent across the whole world. And then, so let's say he understands that if we keep it in this gray zone, as Jeremy said, then maybe we do have the opportunity to just make so much progress that no matter what they do, no matter how they rule it, the chains that actually have utility will be able to thrive and accomplish their mission.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of like what could hopefully happen. I think they're trying to also delay stuff, but they're trying to delay crypto so they can do a CBDC. And it seems to be pretty clear. I know some people who are more connected in DC in that whole space seem to have heard like secondhand a lot of that. It seems like the current administration is just trying to get rid of crypto so we can get a CBDC going. But the other wrinkle to this whole story, which I'm sure you've probably seen mentioned, is SEC's Gensler was offered to serve as an advisor to Binance in 2019, lawyers claim. Years before serving as the head of the SEC, Gensler offered up his advisory service to Binance, the exchange's lawyers allege, and was denied. So, according to Binance, it's just like, well, she doesn't know that, she was sliding into my DMs a few years ago, and I said, no, that's why she's salty. It's like literally at that level. So, I mean, I don't know if there's, do you think there's anything like real behind that, or do you think that's just like more things that lawyers are throwing at it to kind of muddy the waters?
Lawyers are just gonna lawyer, man. Like anything that can come up will come up, because there's law, there's precedent, there's money on the line. And anytime that the incentives are aligned to play dirty, you're gonna play dirty.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty crazy, but you're already starting to see a little bit of fallout from this whole thing. So for example, Crypto.com suspends U.S. institutional exchange service, and they cite the limited demand for, undercurrent market conditions. But I think it might be conveniently timed to the current drama. And, of course, Binance.us is suspending USD deposits and warns of fiat withdrawal pause. Binance said that the moves are part of efforts to protect consumers and the platform amid extremely aggressive and intimidating tactics by the SEC. Because I believe in the case of Binance.us, the SEC is seeking a warrant to seize assets or freeze their accounts and stuff, which is, at that point, that's getting pretty gnarly.
Not your keys, not your coins. As always, if you have any money on any of those accounts, get them out right now, because if Binance screws up or things don't go the other way, well, then you're wrecked. So you've got to just withdraw, and then it just all becomes a clown show, and you can watch comfortably from the sidelines. So heavily recommended to self-custody your crypto.
Yeah, and that is a little bit of a foreshadowing for for a little bit from now, but yeah, it's kind of, this whole thing does have a good effect in shaking out the kind of thing, like the bad projects. And I think this whole thing is, by the way, bad for crypto. But, I mean, Jeremy, what was the first year you were in crypto or you started getting
2013.
Yeah, so you're a 10-year guy just like me. And Kallisti, you're a little bit more recent, but still kind of, a few years, right? Like 5 years?
Yeah, like depending on perspective, I'm either a noob or an OG because I got my first Bitcoin in 2011, but
Yeah,
I was just totally oblivious to the space between then and 2020, basically. So,
did you hear about like the value proposition about uncensorable money and the governments can't shut this down? Were you aware of that stuff in 2011?
in 2011, no, I was fresh out of high school at that point, and you know how the U.S. education system is, so I didn't understand money.
Yeah, so well, I mean, not probably the global education system, but I guess the U.S. is especially bad in that.
I
in
just
that
know that you
case.
can relate, since we're both in
Yeah.
the U.S.
Although I can also not relate because I was homeschooled all the way to college, so I
Oh,
didn't.
yeah. So
I avoided all that nonsense.
yeah, I guess to here to the rest of the world, our education system leaves much to be desired, and I was fully aware of
Yeah.
that. I was in that system.
But so this is retro year. 2023 is 2013 again, kind of. In that back in the day, like I remember just coming into the space and like hearing about Bitcoin from like Ron Paul forums and things like that. And like, precious metals people are like, oh, but there's also this digital gold that like no one can censor, and people were getting excited. They were using it. People were excited if any place took it. Like, it's like, did you know that this one place can take it? You can actually take it, but you can also trade it with each other. And I remember when Overstock first started, it was like the first big company.
That was the year after. That was in 2014, yeah.
Yes. And I remember that all of like our crypto people in New Hampshire got together and bought everything we could off of Overstock, so that Overstock had New Hampshire had the highest per capita sales in Bitcoin of any area, even more than Utah, where the company was based. So it was just like people were getting all excited. Like, but those days there was this idea of like the censorship resistant kind of thing of like, well, this government's going to crack down, and this is what you do with like all that kind of stuff that you mostly hear like Monero people talking about today. And that was like the ethos then. And I kind of feel like 2020, like we almost took like a 10-year detour, just like the crypto space went just like, oh, well, let's do our block size wars and drama. It's like side quests, right? You do block size wars and drama, and then you got like the ICO boom, and then programmable stuff and NFTs and just all this other stuff. And then now we're like back to the main quest. Like now we're back to the peer-to-peer electronic cash. We're back to because the government also, like, they took their sweet time cracking down on this stuff. Like, they took forever, let's be honest. Like, I did not expect it to take this long. And now we're here. It's like, oh, back to the playbook we were expecting. And now we're back in the trenches. And it's a scary time for a lot of people. But, like, this for me is just like this is what I signed up for. And it just had this weird pump scam coin kind of detour for a while. And I'm just like, all right, we're back here. This is nice.
I think we're ready for it. Well, I think we're ready for it. I agree. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. In 2013, what was the big stories? It was Mt. Gox blew up kind of at the end of the year and at the start of the year. So that was sort of similar to the FTX and now the Binance stuff that we've been seeing, right? You had everybody was very concerned about regulation. That was shortly before Jeremy Allaire, and what was that guy, the bit license in New York? It was sort of similar vibes there. Obviously, the Silk Road got shut down in 2013. That was also big around regulation and how actually undercover is all this stuff, right? So you're right, that was spot on, and I agree with you that things have been derailed certainly since the middle of about 2016, where the block size war was in full swing. But now, yeah, we are coming back around to it, and I think we're just set up to win, basically. Like, I mean, I'm perpetually pretty crypto optimistic, but if you compare now to 10 years ago, the amount of funding in crypto on the crypto side of the balance sheet has skyrocketed. So that's already a huge win. And the other big thing that you can't get any other way except for things to have gone this way is that the public have had a very, 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 very long time, and things take a long time to understand it a bit and not be freaked out by it, right? Just 10 years of time is a long time for everybody. Oh, I heard about crypto. I heard about crypto. I heard about crypto. What is this? I kind of looked it up. Not really sure what's going on. But just time is the ultimate thing, the ultimate legitimizer in people's minds. Once something is around long enough, if people are still excited about it, still going off about it, sooner or later, everyone else goes, all right, well, that must be a thing. If it's, 6 months, they think that'll go away. That's a fad. If it's 2 years, they're a bit like, oh, okay, it's been going on for a while. But once something's been around in their own mind for 5 to 10 years, then it's kind of like, this isn't going anywhere. I'm just not involved yet, kind of thing.
Yeah. Once Matt Damon shills it, it's over,
I guess so, yeah.
All we need is Jim Cramer to say that the price is going to go down. And
Yeah.
that's time to load up.
Or no one's ever going to use his stuff as money, and just like,
That'll be
green
it.
light, Yeah, it's kind of crazy because there's an interesting like narrative thing, and I know that especially people from the Bitcoin Cash community are very sensitive to the narrative wars, because that's literally been all that's gone on in that like segment for what has it been, 6 years, I guess, but more, of course. But I'm just saying Bitcoin Cash's history. But the narrative, the narrative is, think like for old timers, right? Things used to be about peer-to-peer cash, then there's a detour and stuff, then it all went to shit. And the thing is, there's a narrative with the maxis, which is, then Ethereum came and the shitcoin boom and all this kind of stuff, and we've been here warning you the whole time. And that's like the conventional wisdom, I would say. I don't know, it's conventional, but it's, loud maxis on Twitter and Sailor with his, ugly ass face. That's all that stuff is, right? But in reality, that is not entirely untrue. Let's be honest. I'm not saying give maxis credit, but like, it's not entirely untrue. The thing is, I think that the maxi community excluded themselves from that when they were part of it and are a part of it. And I've kind of seen this where the narrative of the block size war in the early days was, the maxi narrative was more hardcore on like self-sovereignty, on decentralization and stuff. That's why we can't scale, is because we have to be absolutely like super risk intolerant in this way, whereas the big blockers are like, no, we can scale and still be decentralized enough for it not to be a problem. But now, like over time, like that was narrative. I guess over time we're seeing that preaching to the choir here a little bit, that might not have been so much of a good faith narrative, because then you start saying, just use your credit card, and like, well, Lightning will work, and then when Lightning doesn't work as well as they'd like, it's just like, well, just use the custodial one, and it's fine, and it just like goes on and on and on, and now they're cheering the SEC crackdown. Have you guys seen your favorite or least favorite maxis on Twitter, especially, saying how this is a good thing for crypto?
It's been a little bit of that. I mean, it's really, to me, of course, this is completely predictable. That's what I've been telling everybody for the longest time. But what you need to understand in all of these sort of narrative shifts is the dynamics of, it's not exactly the same people. That's kind of what it is. So you had a pool of people who were in Bitcoin and they were all fighting and whatever. And then because of all the problems in Bitcoin, a lot of people who were in Bitcoin left, and they were replaced by new people. So the people, and then that sort of watering down happens over time. It's happened over the last 10 years, essentially, right? Yeah. So a lot of the people who were strong on either the peer-to-peer cash stuff, or even, like you're saying, the decentralization stuff, the resistance to government stuff, all of that died essentially when the big blockers lost the block size war and had to create Bitcoin Cash, and or a lot of people had moved on to Ethereum just because there was still block space there and people were excited and moving on to the next thing, right? So the way communities move is that they drift over time as but it's not like any one individual necessarily changes their opinion that much. Just that more people join on one side and they leave on the other side. So of course the BTC side have just slowly shifted more and more and more and more and more into just being captured, and more into the whole thing is the price has to go up, and if it's not going up, then they're all just kind of waiting for the next pump, hoping, and there's nobody actually building anything. And then obviously now you've also had the Taproot Wizards thing has also brought in a big shift, because there were so many people that came back returning from some of those, or who found their way in through Ethereum or whatever into Bitcoin and now flooded out. So all the laser eyes and the most hardcore Twitter trolls, they're just falling off a cliff. Like every day there's less and less people. All of those big people, you know, Spencer Schiff, like where's his laser eyes? Like they're gone. Ironically, at the same time as his dad is finally getting into Bitcoin, you know?
Getting into BSV, but
exactly,
which is
it's hilarious. It's actually like it couldn't have been any more perfect, really, as far as that goes. But you know, so that's essentially what's happening, right? Things have just become diluted, and they don't realize, because they're in an echo chamber, that the world has just sort of moved around them and is kind of carrying on past them, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is there's been like the age where you can be economically viable as a company and only be Bitcoin, or only Bitcoin and Ethereum, like something like that, is long since over. However, now that there's a new era, since this last bull pump, the laser eye pump, where underperforming mediocre companies in crypto can just do Bitcoin only, but be very like loud about marketing that and kind of survive despite being a mediocre product. It's also known as the Swan Bitcoin model, which I'm going after them directly. I don't give a shit. But that whole idea was like, well, only the shitcoin casinos are going to be hit by the SEC. We're all going to be okay. Now, do I have a new news for you? Okay, so first off, Prime Trust is a custody firm that basically powered a lot of these kind of companies like Swan Bitcoin. And so anyway, this tweet here I'm putting up, it says, in case you just woke up, Prime Trust may be insolvent. Swan Bitcoin moved to Fortress and BitGo. Strike is doing custody in-house. And so the funny thing about that is those two of the biggest maxi platforms, like Bitcoin only type platforms, got affected by like the whole SEC thing, caused insolvency, where now you had their custodians that they were using were crypto generic custodians, right? And they just like basically just like spun off their maxi brand as like a front end to like pretend, but they were still using the same shitcoin casino kind of companies as anywhere. And so now they were just like, while the CEO of what's his name, of Swan Bitcoin, who's blocked me on Twitter,
Corey, whatever his name is, Clip Ernstein,
yeah,
or whatever his name is,
yeah, who used to be an altcoiner extraordinaire himself and pumping EOS and all this stuff, but of course that's the way these things go. Yes. So while he's ranting about all this kind of stuff, his company is not allowing withdrawals or buys. Now, this has changed since now, I believe. But for at least a day or two, I saw people saying, whoa, I can't buy, I can't DCA. Like all these maxis who were yelling at me on Twitter, because, you know, I like to troll them, because why not? They were now saying, I can't get my money out and all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh no. Like, it's kind of, it's hilarious. It's also like genuine human concern, right? I don't want them to lose their mind. I'm like, no. But it's also hilarious. And now it seems like all is well for the moment. However, this is an interesting twist. So I'm going to put up the Jack Mahler's, hate that guy too, but whatever. I just published Strike Infrastructure Update. We now serve customers on our own infrastructure. We're proud to offer our own safe and reliable infrastructure to custody our customers' Bitcoin and US dollars. Now, maxis are saying that's a good thing. However, this is from one of these maxi accounts, right? These toxic maxi accounts. But if you deposit or hold your Bitcoin on a third-party platform or service and they are not or don't use a qualified custodian, those Bitcoin are probably not legally yours anymore. Boom. So the thing with this actually happened in, I forget which, there's been so many exit scams and collapses, so I can't keep track of them. But there was one, I don't remember if it was Voyager or FTX. It was one of those things. No, Celsius. I think it was Celsius, but again, correct me, please, if I'm wrong, that made the case, argued the case, and won, I guess, in this case, that customer funds were company funds. So as in...
Do you think that was Voyager? That does sound familiar.
Yeah, I thought it was Celsius because everyone doesn't like that guy, but it could have been Voyager. But basically the argument is, again, someone please correct me who's looking this up. I'm not going to look it up right now. But basically, if you deposit funds on this platform and they go bust, everything is up for grabs in bankruptcy. Whereas if it's not like segregated customer funds, whereas if they have enough money to make the customers whole, they do it and then they eat the losses on the rest. It's like, no. So Strike was using a custodian, meaning that was customer funds were SAFU, whatever. Customer funds were there. Now they're doing it themselves. If Strike, again, this is just rapidly developing. It's just what I see. I don't know if they've applied to become a licensed custodian. I don't know if they're going to. As it stands now, though, it looks like Strike is now legally owning customer deposits. So if they go bust or if they get shut down, you get rugged. And so the maxis are getting deeper and deeper into Wreckville, into custodial Wreckville. And it's just like, I expected the fallout of all this stuff to hit the gleeful maxis later. But it's happening the same week. And I'm here for it, kind of. I mean, I'm not here for it because I don't want people to lose money. I'm sad when... Yeah, but at the same time, for like Schadenfreude kind of purposes, I'm kind of smirking a little bit.
It's the same people who are saying have fun staying poor. So it's like, yeah, there's that little bit of vindication. But at the same time, it's like, well, this could have been avoided, right?
Yeah.
I like this point about the marketing though of the Swan Bitcoin and whatever those other ones. Like Casa was also similar. Jamison Loppet was like Bitcoin only, just for Bitcoiners, laser eyes all the way. And then at some point he was like, and we're adding Ethereum. And then loads of people were like, what are you doing? Yeah, exactly.
That was hilarious. I actually know some of their employees are like local to me, like friends of mine, and it's funny to see like good people, right? Good people, but not in a crypto sense. Like a little bit slightly toxic maxi and that stuff. And the conversations have changed now. Now they're like, man, they're going after us so hard. We're just supporting Ethereum too. Like, what's the matter? I'm just like,
of course.
You know?
But it's this scenario that you said about Strike taking custody of their own Bitcoin. It really makes me think about the way that crypto works. Is essentially people, even though I know it has a bad rap and everything, and there's been a lot of history misunderstanding behind it, but maximalists are good. You want your coin to have maximalists. Why? Because they're the ones who actually drive the coin, right? The people who run the podcast week after week, the people who use all the businesses that support your
I
coin.
hate that term maximalism, so I'm gonna say true believers. You want believers?
All right.
Okay.
Well, whatever. Your true believers are the ones who are who are powering everything, right? The people who are like, I've got a bit of Bitcoin and I've got a bit of Ethereum and I've got a bit of Monero, they aren't doing shit, right? They're just kind of at the fringe of everything. But the ones in the center making it all happen are your true believers, right? So then what we saw then in that period where, okay, we can front as a BTC only kind of company was they were playing to those true believers. But the thing is, when you have a smaller coin, you have to rely a lot on general crypto infrastructure, right? Because you're not going to have the numbers essentially to build up all your own sort of exchanges and businesses and all that sort of stuff. So instead, so those smaller coins tend to have a lot of, they're like, oh, go use this exchange, which has every coin, but buy our coin rather than go to this specific thing, which is run by only our community for our community. And so now the BTC, like the walls are kind of slowly closing in because that laser eye crowd or true believers or whoever is slowly fading away from BTC. over time. And so there's the initial cash grab was to say we're the Bitcoin only and appeal to all those people, but now that crowd is thinning, so those companies, their resources and their target market is shrinking, and that's a really big problem, because then like the defense will be that they'll all lock shields, they'll all try and be even more like we're all in together, and that'll be great until suddenly the whole ship sinks at once and they're all wrecked. So that's what they're setting themselves up for, basically.
Yeah, although I think that setup works better for them if they were something like a Monero, where they can be that small group of hardcores and still have a good time. A big part of being a maxi is being number one and the number going up. And I think I think a lot of people were expecting the super cycle or whatever you call it, the hyper Bitcoin, all these
Another
like
lie.
words.
That was the biggest lie. Oh man,
But it
Dan
was-
held. It's gonna be the super cycle, guys. Oh my god, I remember I did a whole segment calling that
Yeah.
out on my show. Oh, that would have aged like fine wine. I'll have to go back and dig that
Yeah,
up.
unfortunately, the washing machine can only go regular or whites only or whatever it is. It's not. There's no super cycle on that machine. It's a super cycle, hyper Bitcoinization, and there's some other weird terms that they used about just try to like make up things that aren't reality, right? And I think that 69,420, while it was a hilarious price for Bitcoin, also was a giant disappointment. And
Yes.
for those people, I think it's great. Like, I think that going from a top of 20 grand to like almost 70, I think that's nice. I think it is.
No.
But not for them, not for those expectations. And then it's just like going down, last chance to buy Bitcoin at X price, and then it wasn't the last chance over and over. And now it's like, I don't even check it. Is what, 25 grand today? Is that what it is? Something like that.
But that like it's just the lie that the entire BTC people are bought into, that like number go up forever, and that's not the case. It's actually quite the opposite, right? The higher the price goes, actually the harder it is to get the price higher and higher, because it's an exponential, right? The difference between $10 and $100 is not actually all that many sort of real people, even though price is set at the margin. But still, as the size grows, it gets harder and harder to get that next pump. So of course, 70,000, that was a total fail, because that was a whole laser ray to 100K. That was all about, they didn't even get close. So that was a complete failure. And I think that was a complete failure too, sort of on their behalf, because that's kind of where it's topped out at. Like, Bitcoin is now a global phenomenon. Everyone knows about it. Everyone had the chance to be a part of it. Everyone saw that price hype cycle. The next crypto cycle, I will expect, ETH and BCH and XMR, a lot of these other coins will rise relative to BTC, might go up as well too. But even just if they get back to their all-time highs, and then other coins are just rocketing up, is what I would expect, because now everybody's kind of over it. Anybody who wanted to invest in BTC already has, and even with a bit of a pump, if other coins are going up more, they're not going to be flooding into that,
Yeah. What do you think, Kallisti? Is that a good?
I mean, there's just way more upside potential with the lower market cap coins. It's just math. But it's like you said, it takes exponentially more money to increase that price. To get that next 10x, it takes 10x more money.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I do think there's still a lot of like basic retail kind of like ability to get into crypto. The thing is, I guess the problem is once you make your a lot of these, like, we're talking about utility, because every project has utility, even the pumpiest ones. Dogecoin has a lot of utility because you can buy it and it goes up. Like, Elon will tweet about it. It's very utilitarian, because your purchasing power grows by, like, literally it's cheap. Doge has always been kind of cheap. It's always been around, and you can kind of like just take it and like maybe you'll get a super Elon pump. Like, I hate to talk about that speculation as utility, but it's kind of true to a certain extent.
Okay, you have to contrast that against like Hex or something, though, right? Where that is, I guess, basically the utility of Hex as defined by its own like rhetoric. It's like, oh, it's designed to pump. Like, Doge isn't designed to pump. Doge is a meme. So you get the utility of like the utility of the community. The memes that come with it, the general feeling of the brand, yeah. And I think it's kind of the same with like NFT collections too. Like a lot of what you're selling is like the brand and the community and just like the feeling of being part of that NFT club, where you don't really, and yeah, I guess you get that with Hex, but it's like the actual utility of Hex is literally based around that speculation, whereas Doge is not exactly. I feel like it's important to differentiate that.
Yeah, Doge, the wow is just the utility, and the pump sometimes is a side effect of that. There's a couple interesting things about the way Hex is designed for, I guess, promoting long-term holding and like the way the scheme is set up. Like, I'm not going to say it's not a scam because I don't believe that. I'm just saying there's some interesting mechanics that one could implement into, something a little bit better that add actual utility. But the thing about like Bitcoin's prime utility is, first of all, it's ubiquitous branding, which, is kind of like the whole world. It's kind of already reached its peak utility. Can't get more ubiquitous. Everyone knows what Bitcoin is. And it's also number go up, right? The fact that the price will go up is the primary utility. And the problem is that is a lot of external factors, but also other coins are just based on that whole upside thing are going to be objectively better. Maybe not as like a slower savings account kind of idea, but as far as like the pump, like again, Hex is was a better Bitcoin kind of for that use case. But then you get like, okay, well, what about like decentralization? And it's like, I don't know. In some cases, it depends. You're talking about supply, but then Sailor's buying it all up, and Satoshi has a ton. Sorry, Craig. Satoshi has a ton. And it's like, okay, but then mining pools are starting to be concentrated in places like the US, for example. I don't know. Like, but okay, you can make an argument there. But then it's like censorship resistance. And it's like, well, if everyone does stuff through Strike, which owns your money, then it's now it's dipping below the pack. Now it's like, well, maybe not as much. But then you're like, okay, like security and reliability. Reliability, I mean, it's very reliably unreliable these days, I guess, right? It works the way it always works, except with extreme market conditions or just like a couple people putting like frog coin on there, then all of a sudden it becomes unusable. Maybe not so much. Then you get security. They think it's the most secure crypto in the world. That's a big part of its value proposition. There's lots of arguments that could be made. But with its shrinking block reward, its shrinking inflation, and fees are just kind of capped. Like there's only so much in fees people will take. People will pay a few bucks for a Bitcoin transaction. They won't pay more than that unless they're trying to get like number 1 out of 500 Pepe coin thingy that then they can flip for a lot more. Unless they're trying to do something special, they're not going to pay more than that. And a lot of institutional, like, they'll just be like a mass opening and closing of lightning channels or rebalancing, and that'll be one transaction. They'll pay $500 for that one, but they can also pay not that and just do it all custodially, right? Without on their, like, it's starting to, now all of a sudden the security starts to like shake. Once you start seeing the hash rate like not go up as much, once you start seeing the amount of money that miners gets paid starts to like falter, then that's when the cracks start to show. So that's kind of the future of Bitcoin in the middle term, I guess, right?
Yeah, of course. But there's also just the time. It's the same thing as before, which is that as time goes on, one of the big selling points of Bitcoin, BTC, their selling point was, well, we're going to be here, we're reliable, all these other centralized scams will fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So-and-so is in charge of the foundation.
Yeah,
a lot of them will, and a lot of them have, right? But like I was saying, over the last 10 years, does anybody think Ethereum's going to go away at this point? No. It's kind of over that hump, right? The same with Litecoin, the same with Bitcoin Cash, the same with Monero. There's a lot of projects that have been in the race long enough that screeching, we're the only one that's going to survive, is just patently false. And everybody kind of gets that there are other projects with enough real people and enough momentum and enough serious passion behind it to keep it alive. And more than that, to actually thrive. Now all those communities have done all the groundwork building that they wanted to do, and they've started getting onto the more fun stuff, the more advanced stuff, which BTC has been totally neglecting. So now you have the rising tide of these other projects that have survived the brutal market of 99% have died, right? But the 1% that have survived have not only sort of caught up in perceived reliability or stability just by process of survival, but now they're starting to edge ahead because they've also been investing in more exciting tech. And even though they're smaller communities with less network effect, those network effects are really starting to click together for those coins that have been around a long time, and people have been consistently working away at them. And we're going to just see more and more of that, especially in the next year or two. The BTC people aren't going to even know what hit them in terms of how behind the eight ball they are, basically.
Yeah, that's something I've definitely seen happen is there's just a lot of focus on like this thing that we got going is inassailable. You cannot attack this. We're so far ahead, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, first of all the consensus mechanisms, like Bitcoin is the daddy of proof of work. And proof of work is the one that the environmental kind of regulations are really going after a lot. And obviously that would be bad. I don't think proof of work should be regulated. Like it's just an energy use. Just use it if you want, right? But I think that as far as like the energy footprint, like once you start cracking down on that, because China already did their ban, the Western world starts to do that. Now all of a sudden, it starts to go into like an area again where you have like more, like for example, if most of the Bitcoin Cash or Monero, whatever hash rate was in like Uganda or something, like I don't know if anyone would really care. It's just kind of more appropriate to like, you know, the cypherpunk kind of thing. Like, well, there's miners here now and then they'll be there tomorrow, and it's more fluid. But like for a behemoth like Bitcoin, which first of all has is already at capacity. So when you have like the difficulty adjustment, like when the hash rate went away in China, people couldn't get blocks through like all day. It was insane. And just having those kinds of issues and disruptions just isn't that for that like rock hard stability coin where they're like, oh, look at all the hash rate securing it. Oh, well, it's gone today because it's popping up elsewhere. It's going to start to like chip away at it, you know? And especially once you have like this whole government endorsed coin item, like idea, is a hugely bad idea. And I don't think it's just bad because I don't trust the government, but it's also like they're going to bite you in the back, and then you can't take back your principles, really. There will be some people who remembered, wait, wasn't it the reason I was buying this because it's not a security? This is the one not a security coin that I can buy, but now it's like I can't. Now it's like it restricted because of mining, and it's just like, and then Ethereum is also finally just not a security, but also because it's proof of stake, governments don't care. So Ethereum's the safe coin. I got bamboozled. Like, then that starts to break down, right?
Yeah, of course. And that's the whole thing. It's the irony that the proof of work maybe has the environmental FUD, and then proof of stake has the government, what it's called, SEC attack from the side. So there's no ideal one. Yeah, exactly. Everything's got to just deal with its own trade-offs and problems, right? That's just going to be like anything. But like you said, the once you sold out your principles, you can't get that stuff back. I mean, when you said, okay, there's loads of normie people who still haven't bought any crypto that might get hyped in the next bull run, I think a lot of those people, yes, they will, but I don't see them all going for Bitcoin, because by now they all have friends who are into crypto or somebody that they trust or whatever, and the chances that person says Bitcoin and only Bitcoin is at an all-time low. So instead, they're going to go, oh, who's my local crypto friend, and go to them, and that friend will say, man, I got into ETH and I bought these 3 monkeys and it was sick, and then the fees got really high, so now I'm on Avalanche. And their friend will be like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get a little bit of Avalanche and maybe just a tiny bit of Ethereum. Sounds like a good mix, you know. That's kind of what's going to happen. So I think, yeah, everybody knows about Bitcoin, but even if the price is going up, all this environmental stuff too, that's just, they've also a bit done. People whinging about the environment, like they just can't sustain it because they're busy protesting 100 other things
Yeah.
like at the same time. Like you can't just be like, it's just Bitcoin mining. Like the environmental protesters protest everything. They're fighting against the oil industry, and they're fighting against whale hunting, and they're fighting against, they've got the wrong
Work cut
problem
out
is
for them.
that they're firing too broad. They're fighting like 10 battles at once. Whereas the crypto industry is like, nope, we're just doing crypto and just that. And so, of course, over time, it's just going to plow through the resistance, basically.
Yeah, what I think is interesting with the environmental thing with proof of work is I think that I don't see proof of work getting banned. I mean, I'm not even saying effectively banned. I'm saying I don't see it banned writ large in the Western world. I do see there be some kind of like, well, it has to be done with renewables, kind of like Elon Musk's whole thing with Tesla. It's like he gets government credits and stuff for running like a sustainable renewables whatever business, and so it's the same sort of a thing where I think that it'll just kind of cartelize proof of work mining operations in the U.S. where it becomes more than already, I guess, where it becomes like, well, these are the environmentally friendly ones. These are renewables plants. The ones who aren't on renos, you have to register. It just will make it a little bit like less centralized, probably. I mean, less decentralized. But, in the meantime, there'll be some Yahoo up in like a obscure Canadian province where the officials don't even know where to find them. Like, burning a hole in the sun up there to stay, just there are always going to be something like that going on. You can't quite, that might be another, like, especially like the thing is, I think on the energy subject, I think that the corner is turning towards nuclear a little bit finally. I mean, nuclear got kind of panned for generations because, I mean, it's an easy thing to FUD, right? But now I think people are starting to like look into that as a more sustainable kind of thing. And if you basically run a nuclear, like a mini nuclear reactor out in the middle of nowhere with like Starlink connection and just like fields of ASICs, like, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, you love to see it. It sounds great to me.
Do you think we're ever going to see self-sovereign nuclear?
Listen, the way 3D printing has been going and stuff, I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to happen. I think I mean, I don't think it's going to happen individually on a wide scale, but I do think I can imagine just enough people just like slap together some reactor somewhere in the woods of Siberia and just like, you can't stop it enough, and like someone's like, well, this will only take out a city block if it goes, and they're like, I think we'll see,
Where are
like,
they getting these materials from?
mm-hmm.
They bought it with Monero, probably. That's the answer.
Yeah. Rob in the comments said nuclear sub crypto mining.
Hell like yes.
They're like underwater. With an ASIC. That'd be pretty interesting. Yeah, like heat the sub with the mining heat, and then you have a nuclear power plant right there in the sub, and then some kind of internet connection, I guess. I don't know how that works underwater, but I'm sure it exists, right?
Yeah, and then a giant squid takes out half your hash rate. You never know.
Wasn't there a coin, like a squid coin or something?
I'm sure
Maybe that's what happened to it.
There was a Squid Game coin back when that was popping off, but everyone who invested in that is now undoubtedly scammed. So
yeah, but I mean that kind of brings back to the whole which way is adoption going to go now? Obviously, the risks of the maxi approach are starting to get high. So I think that personally, if Bitcoin's going to keep working out with all these custodial risks and regulations on the services they use, they're probably going to have to start exploring some things like maybe modest block size increases or something, just to like still be able to use it and open up their own Lightning channels and stuff. Because like Lightning does take a lot of, I guess, repeat traffic off the chain, but it's still L1 heavy. And so maybe it's like instead of 10 transactions, you'll send one, but that's still like if you're doing like little payments. So we'll see. But one thing I think it's kind of interesting, at the heart of a coin project are the true believers, the maxis, as you will, because you can be a true believer without being like a maxi. Believe everything else is shade. Just this is all you care about. But then there's always the other end of the spectrum, which is the idiot noob or whatever, and those people need to inform the center as far as like features and narratives and things like that. The people that just don't care, they're like, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I sync my whatever? It's just like if your wallet has to sync because it's like, no. That it really has to scan all the block headers ahead of time. And 10 seconds into syncing, then they're never going to use crypto again, kind of thing. Or it's just like, oh, I got crypto, the price went here. Oh, no. And then that kind of stuff. So some of those, basically, people really need a good user-friendly wallet for all this kind of stuff to work. And I hear that you guys have quite an interesting project going. Would you mind spending a little time talking about the Selene Wallet, which I'll quickly put up on the screen? And yeah, it says join the cash economy, developed with heart by Kallisti and the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Oh, I think I know those guys. It says puts an easy, no hassle, instant payments in the palm of your hand. Experience the future of money, Google Play Store, etc., etc. So, mind just giving us a little elevator pitch on this stuff?
Yeah. So essentially, obviously on my show, the tagline is following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, right? And I mean that. I mean that everybody in the world is going to use Bitcoin Cash every single day, right? So how are we going to get there? Well, firstly, I had to start the podcast, get a bunch of hype going, get some connections, get the existing community some morale. Kind of got that on lock, right? So the next step of my plan was I did some music in between to get a bit more attention and mix it up a bit. And then step 3 was to bust out the keyboard and make a wallet, because in Bitcoin Cash or even in Monero or in Dash or in BTC or any coin, I have not yet seen a wallet that I was like, this is a slam dunk winner. The closest was probably Mycelium back in the day. I don't know where they're at now, but they had something kind of very similar to what we have now, which is just, it's a light wallet. It follows the Bitcoin white paper, which is that it just does SPV transactions. So it's super fast. It's instant, zero confirmation. We just hide all that from the user. So you scan and you send, and it's blazingly fast. The whole app is super small as well. It's only like about three megabytes, I think, at its current size. And we've started with that, basically simple send and receive. We've got iOS release coming out soon, and today I was working with ChatGPT on we're going to have translation into 22 languages pretty soon as well too. So that's where we're at now, but it's essentially the fastest, slickest, easiest wallet you've ever used, and that's kind of step 1, right? Then after that, we're going to start really powering it up, right? We'll probably put in Cash Fusion so you can increase your privacy by just having auto mixing on. You can already set it into whatever currencies and exchange rates you want. There's loads of stuff with any hedge that we can do, having a stable coins, having your money locked in gold or in silver, denominated, all decentralized, all on chain. BCH protocol is now popping off with cash tokens. We've got to add that. So it starts with just the simple send and receive that the average noob can get. You onboard someone, you show them in 10 seconds, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then in their free time, once they look at the other tabs, this is not the case now, but it will be soon, then they'll be like down the crypto rabbit hole into like, wow, NFTs and decentralized contracts and all of that stuff. So that's kind of the vision, I'd say.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Kallisti, about this? About your baby?
Man, it is my baby. I love this project so much, but I think Jeremy summarized it really well. Kind of like while he's been doing everything with morale building and building the podcast and everything, and he's got like a really good formula for expanding this community. I think it's been working really well. So then meanwhile, when I joined the community, totally oblivious to what he was doing at the time. I mean, just getting my own research, my own immersion. I start discovering more about what Bitcoin Cash can do. I actually built a Cash ID prototype browser extension wallet. Like that was the very first BCH project I ever actually did, like some 6 months into a year when I joined the community. And I learned about libauth and all of that, and I wanted to like figure out how to actually do this. And like all the documentation and resources to get devs into our community is like still lacking, and that's kind of a problem. And I experienced this firsthand. But so hopefully that's something we can rectify going forward. But really the takeaway being like, okay, so like there's all these different projects, there's like this community building we can do, and then we're all kind of like dependent on bitcoin.com at the time.
Oh yeah.
Like 2020, 2021. And then so at the time there was a lot of effort toward physical merchant onboarding. We want to go to businesses. We want to be like, hey, Bitcoin Cash is amazing. Get this POS app, get this wallet, and you can accept Bitcoin Cash, and it's super easy. And the number one onboarding wallet at the time was the Bitcoin.com wallet. I don't know if that's still the case now. I think a lot of people are starting to migrate more toward like Paytaka, who's doing like really good work, or like Zapit, especially in India. Because there is demand in our community for wallets that cater specifically to the Bitcoin Cash experience, because it's an experience you can't get with most other chains. So we took the same approach with Selene, recognizing the hole that Bitcoin.com was leaving. We wanted to go in and fill that hole, because there just simply isn't another wallet that focuses on the send and receive use case as much as we are, the onboarding use case as much as we are. Other wallets such as Paytaka and Zapit have other features that would be appealing. Like Paytaka is really leading the way with the cash token. Zapit's really doing a lot of interesting stuff with like the peer-to-peer exchange, and then they also have the groundbreaking integration with INR. So like it's really kind of awesome, because all of these different wallets like can kind of cater to different segments of the community. And with Selene, we just saw that this particular segment wasn't being filled yet, so we decided to go for it.
And of course, it's all open source, worth mentioning, and all community funded as well too. So that was part of the problem too, that we saw the Bitcoin.com wallet was kind of a bit, captured by the interests of that company. And they have done a great job for a long time, and they've got their own, problems and battles to handle, right? But their wallet wasn't open source, and obviously in crypto you need open source wallets, so we decided we'd make it open source and funded by the community.
Yeah, so touch on like the bitcoin.com thing a little bit. So I remember in the early days, so Bitcoin Cash launched, there was like a little bit of time before it caught like the big blocker like community kind of jumped into. It was like a few months when like Roger Veras like casually mentioned it here and there, but wasn't like promoting it, wasn't like sold on it. But then of course Roger and Bitcoin.com and all of them jumped in, and for a while Bitcoin.com was kind of like the BCH core team or whatever, like kind of the corollary for that. And like the Bitcoin.com wallet was a pretty good wallet. I never thought it was like the best, but it was pretty good. And over time, from my usage of like, I just don't have it anymore, because over time just started to become more and more annoying to use, and more features got put in that just had nothing to do with it. And then just like, especially once, Roger sort of stepped away a little bit from Bitcoin.com, now I don't even know what they do anymore. Like, it's just kind of weird. So have you guys used the wallet recently? Is it kind of like not really super usable for like basic payments?
Well, it's just getting worse and worse. Basically, obviously, this is a bit of us shitting on our competition, but they just keep putting in more and more ads they have this new Verse token. So they're basically trying to shill their own token. Nobody needs that. It gives you these ads at all the worst times, but who even wants ads to begin with? So that just sucks. And then they've put in, obviously, they have Ethereum support. They added Avalanche for some reason. And it's just become this generic mess of like a kind of crappy multi-coin wallet that used to be pretty good for BCH, but is now kind of sucks for everything. And they're just trying to shill their coins. So all around, it's just sort of terrible, and that kind of reflects the company as well. And I know there's a lot of people in that company who are doing good work and who believe in BCH and all of that, but it was just the timing of how things worked out, that they went hard on BCH when it really was hitting into its rough patches, and so they had to do a lot of work to kind of keep that going. And then now that things have actually turned around and the BCH community is starting to look positive and optimistic, and growth is coming back, is the exact moment that they've kind of already wandered off to chase after something else. So I expect that they will come back and be more heavily involved in BCH, but it's a really good thing for the community, actually. Like you said, they were a big player for quite a long time, but you can't rely on everything, there. They were never really the core team in the sense that they didn't ever run like the node infrastructure or anything like that, but they were certainly the sort of flagship for a lot of the promotion and funding and ads and outreach and the wallet dev, obviously. But now that's all changing, right? So now there's loads of other ways that the community promotes itself, like my podcast, and we have, like Kallisti was saying, a bunch of different wallets that are just by the BCH community for the BCH community. And it cuts back to what we were talking before about your community has to grow its own things internally as it matures. It needs to have its own tools and its own stuff that it can fund and rely on, and not be worried about, oh, but what if Binance like delist this, then we're just screwed, or something like that. So we're in a good spot as far as that goes, I think.
Bitcoin Collab commented, he says, I get ads mid-transaction now. You can see the screenshots I took. He said, in the Bitcoin.com wallet, you get advertisements in the middle of transactions you are conducting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little sketch.
It's just super annoying.
They must be hard up on money. Like, that's the thing, is I understand this. Like, crypto, the free market is undefeated, right? You cannot say the free market's wrong. You're wrong. Even if you're right, you're still wrong. It's like, but crypto has had a crazy monetization problem, kind of, where it became too difficult with current tech to find a way to monetize building the best stuff, but then the worst stuff became the easiest to monetize. Just the casinos, just like so much money. And so it's like, it seems like all the money is in, formally, I guess, in trading and in speculation and in building cool, awesome tech that looks cool and awesome and gets the VC money. But it's just like the actual sustainable stuff. And so that's something that I think Ethereum did really well in retrospect. I don't know if that was their intent, but they catered to having a business around people building all kinds of stuff. And so when people want to speculate on NFTs, they do it on Ethereum. They want to run all these crazy DeFi schemes, they do it on Ethereum. They want to do ICOs to start their companies, whatever. It's all on Ethereum. So the Ethereum network is full of fees of people using them for all this other nonsense. Whereas like even Bitcoin couldn't figure, I mean, a lot of people wanted to use Bitcoin, but like today they won't pay enough for the block size. And then all the cheap chains like Litecoin and stuff and all beyond see very little usage in terms of like fee spends, like total fee spends. So it's like, how do you do this? Like, how do you develop a wallet sustainably? I mean, it seems like people just have to like want to use it, and you have to, get like donations and stuff to like make it happen, like community funded type things. But then as far as like I notice all the best wallets, in my opinion, that aren't Edge. Edge seems to be the one that's actually a decent wallet that's like out there. It's like a company. Whereas like all the other ones seem to be developed by the projects. Like, all the proprietary ones. And that's what Bitcoin.com was, or it kind of had a stand-in as. It was, even though as a company, it was the Bitcoin Cash wallet, the official Bitcoin Cash wallet, sort of. And so because of that, it was okay. But then once they had to become a company and make money, then it just became awful, as they all do. So...
Yeah, exactly. And we're hoping to sort of fix that and show that there's a different way of doing it. So recently we got funded. We did a flip starter, which is like, crowdfunding on BCH. So we got a decent chunk of money in there because the community love what we're doing. You know, proof of work. We released the wallet. It was really good. People could try it out and be like, wow, this is amazing. And we definitely need this. So they gave us some BCH there. But in the future, maybe we'll do some more of that. I think they'll be a part of that. But there's plenty of other ways that we can monetize it that we will investigate as time goes on. One thing that we have talked about doing is we might put in a little like a pop-up which you can just dismiss or turn off, but some people will go for it that says something like, you enjoying this wallet? Here's a setting that you can turn on, and every X transactions, maybe every 20 transactions, send the devs 5 cents, right? And that's very easy for us to build into the wallet. Again, like it's all full circle, but just because Bitcoin is actually easy to use and it works, then they can just switch that on and it can just quietly ping off to us in the background every once in a while. If we have a decent pool of users, that becomes a decent amount of money. And the more they use the wallet, the more kind of we benefit, but also the more invested they are and the more they can spread it around to their friends, right? So that's one thing we can do. We can also do, we wouldn't, I don't think, do like advertising, but we might have a section we're planning to do for like content creators. So people who want to, you know, promote their BCH or maybe even just their generic crypto stuff. Maybe we even just expand it to anything, and people can go in there. You know, content creators can come to us and say, hey, can I put my video in your feed? If we think the video is actually of a high enough standard, then we put it in there, and then people can obviously tip the video creator, and maybe we take a small cut on that, or maybe we don't, and maybe just the content creator pays us to get sort of promoted in the feed, right? We could have a sort of pro tier subscription for really advanced crypto users who want whatever feature that only the super hardcore people want, and then we just charge a $5 monthly subscription somehow to be a part of that. You know, there's loads and loads of things we can do, so I'm not really too worried about the monetization.
Not to mention
at this
the
stage.
entire untapped potential of the actual business to business use cases, and also like back office systems for businesses, POS systems for businesses, like huge ability for revenue streams there, because those apps don't have to be free. Whereas we want the user focused apps to be free always, never have like intrusive ads, anything like that. So we got to find better ways to fund like the ones that Jeremy was suggesting. But when you're dealing with other businesses, money talks, right? So if you want the product that you want, then there's going to be some kind of model there.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you integrate with some kind of third-party services or otherwise, like through the Cash Tokens ecosystem in some way, I'm sure it could be easy to get like a little bit off of, you know, for example, when you hit the BCH bull stabilization protocol, I think that you should be able to find a way to like get skim a little off of that, you know, which is the way most wallets kind of do. It's kind of it's funny because I've been watching the AnyPay folks who had some really good point of sale kind of apps sort of struggle to figure out how to do things, and I think they do like 1/10 of a cent because of they use like the BIP70 payment codes for invoices. I think they take something like 1/10 of a cent of each payment or something like that, but because they mostly do like API stuff like through the Cake Wallet and Edge Wallet and stuff like that, at scale it starts to really like add up. And so I think stuff like that could be very interesting. Of course, it requires a little bit of programmability, whether it's the invoice themselves or whether you're using like actual smart contracts for this kind of stuff to just build stuff in. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, some of the stuff can just be done with regular old UTXOs, just plain old transactions that we've been using since 2010. Like, for instance, the donation mode that Jeremy was talking about, where it's like every 20 transactions, 5 cents. Like, that's just add a 5-cent UTXO to the dev address. That's it. That's a regular transaction. So you can't do that unless your chain has like minimum programmability. Otherwise, you have to use some kind of centralized API where the application layer has to do it rather. So you would maybe bundle that into multiple transactions.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of fun times going forward. It's selene.cash, right, is the address for the website.
SELENE.cash.
And try it out, Joel. I don't know if you haven't downloaded it or had a look at it yet, but for the de-Googled phone, it would be perfect. We provide an APK, so you can download that. And
If you
have it on
haven't
your
tried it
phone.
and you download it right now, I'll send you some sats.
Yeah.
Just
I
your-
have to run to it. I will download it tonight. I have to run and do some other stuff, but like, I do appreciate the APK thing, especially because I'm in this like de-googled rabbit hole, this graphene thing. And when I started using Graphene OS, the Aurora store, which is what lets you privately bridge to the Google Play Store, so you could get Google stuff without them tracking it or spying on you and all this stuff, was down for like a while. So I was just literally finding any sketchy APK files anywhere for all
We'll
my
be on
apps.
Android eventually, also worth noting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is on the Google Play Store. I did check it out. Right now
Yeah.
I got a few downloads going. It's
still
yeah.
newish. It's still what we've been out for, I think,
We
about
haven't
3
even out
weeks.
for
Or
30 days yet. Yeah.
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 So this is just the V1 of it, and anybody who checks it out, you expect to see it improve rapidly over the next probably 6 to 12 months. And but the users are already loving it. We're already getting tons of positive
Nice.
feedback, and so many people have requested all these different features. So obviously those will be the first things that we're going to build, like, because we're not this big existing company, like you were saying. We don't have it's literally just the users want this, and that would be pretty quick to build. We'll just do it. We're not sitting, we're direct talking to the users. We're not worried about, oh, what does my product manager think, and do the investors need to make a return, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
No, it's none of that. It's like I sat down this morning, I'm like, I've got a couple hours, let's look in the issue log, or just start pumping it out. So yeah, it's very lean and efficient in that method.
All right, so shill-o'clock. We already shilled the website for Selene.cash. What about you guys? Where can people follow you and the stuff you do?
BitcoinCashPodcast.com. Go there. Loads of info on everything to do with Bitcoin Cash, and all the links to everything I do as well. If you want to hear me talk a lot more shit,
Yeah.
you can listen to as much of it as you want. But love the digital cash rundown as well too. Everybody listening in, yeah, got to give Joel his props too. Doing amazing work here.
Well, thanks, but everyone knows where they can find me because they're already here. But Kallisti, where do people find you?
Yeah, Kallisti.cash redirects to my Twitter. So it's down on the label in the video here.
Nice.
If you type that in, it'll go to my Twitter. Also, obviously, check out the Selene Wallet. I'm having a great time developing for everyone. So please check that out and tell us what you think.
Okay.
And yeah, definitely check out the podcast, bitcoincashpodcast.com.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Try out the Selene Wallet. I know I will. I'm not just saying that because they paid me, because they didn't. So I'll give that a try tonight. Everyone have a great week, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.